and people from many different places, and all of this makes an Inuvik a great place to live. Item number 2, the adoption of the agenda. Mover seconder, moved by Councilor McDonald, second by Councilor Day. We do have one change in the agenda in that we are dropping 8.1. There's some considerations there that were brought to light, and so 8.1, the renovations for Children's First, will be dropped off the agenda. Okay, any further discussion on the agenda? Okay, all those in favor?
Yes.
Motion carried. All right. 8.2, request for a donation from Ingamo Hall. I think everyone received that this afternoon. Sorry.
We forgot the declaration of conflict of interest.
Oh, sorry, we jumped way ahead there. Oh. Yeah, okay, that's right. Did the agenda, then I went to 8.1, sorry. Declaration of conflict of interest or pecuniary interest with any of the agenda items. Okay, good, nothing there. Item number 4, delegations, but we don't have any of those tonight. Item number 5, I think we're good on the public question period. Item number 6, the adoption of the minutes for the June 25th council meeting. Moved by Deputy Mayor Barlick, seconded by Councillor Lemieux. Further discussion on the minutes? All those in favor?
Yes.
We did get the presentation of the RCMP report on Monday, so we had nothing new tonight. And we went through the action items, give an update on the boat launch. I think that, and the community plan, of course, is here tonight. So any questions about any of the action items? Oh, seeing none. Okay. Now we're on day 2. Request for donation from Ingamo Hall for a full-time dance. This requires a motion, so let's get this on the table, and then we can have a discussion. Moved by Councillor Day, seconded by Deputy Mayor Barlick. Discussion. Maybe Cindy or Jen, give us just a little bit of background that this just came in today.
Yes.
Maybe Trace should.
Yep, Trace can speak to it.
Oh, okay.
Peter, could I ask if this overlaps with the Great Northern Arts Festival?
You can ask that, but no, it doesn't. It's July 18th. The Arts Festival runs from the 9th to the 14th, I think, 5 days.
We did check on that
Okay,
as
thank
well.
Thank you.
That's correct. So the Great Northern Arts Festival, I checked with them. They will be just finishing some cleanup at that point. This request came in early this week, Monday. What they're doing is they're looking to have the hall donated as part of the old time dance that they're putting on. So from my understanding and talking with Marlene, the executive director over at Ingamo, they had an initial event planned. As things do, the event became bigger and there's no longer suitable. But because of the budgetary constraints and the pricing that they're giving out, they're asking for the hall as a donation. They don't need any extra tech or anything like that. I checked with Marlene, so they are just asking for the hall at this point.
Questions, comments from council? Do we know how much they're giving out in prizes?
I do have that here.
Okay.
You're asking for donation. I do not know the source of funding for these prizes. I don't know if this was a budgetary thing or if this was donations from other groups, but they have a jigging contest, for the 15-year and under category. First, second, and third prize are $300, $200, and $100. 16 to 49 are $600, $500, and $350. And then the 15 over category is also $600, $500, and $350. So 3 and 2 is 6. So about $3,000 worth of prizes.
Okay, no, just curious. Further questions from council? Comments, Deputy Mayor or Deputy Mayor Barrett? Councilor Lemieux.
Is this something that typically we would do? Like, cause I don't see a problem with it.
It's something that'll come to council. I mean, any requests like this for donations.
Right.
Come to council, whether it's Ingle Hall wanting our hall, or like with the Great Northern Arts Festival, asking it for that period. So it's. I don't think we've ever had the request for an old time dance before, but
Okay.
we do get requests for various,
Okay.
especially at the facilities. Yeah.
The Community Event Society, not New Year's Eve,
Sorry.
don't we, donate food?
Yes, we've done this many times in the past with groups that come and ask, like for instance, the Community Event Society, the which I think is actually incorporated into the New Year's Eve dance. Yeah, the September 30th Truth and Reconciliation Day, that the group, so often these requests do come in, and it's usually, the positive in the community involvement,
Right.
right?
Right.
So we support that, or we wouldn't have brought it to.
Many of the events don't have that type of prizes, but we do give it to community events.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm guessing with that number of prizes, that's why they outgrew Ingham. Should be my guess.
What was the time? Sorry.
Sorry.
What's the time that they requested from?
6 PM to 1 AM for a non-licensed event. Which would,
What time would we normally close with?
we typically close at 11, but we very often, when these events happen, have staff on to the close of the event. So the only additional consideration on top of the actual hall cost itself would be the extra labor that we would need somebody to stay there just to close the building. But that is something we typically accommodate, whether it's for other what's typically licensed events, but anything that stays later in the building. But usually we close at 11.
Yeah. Councilor Barrett.
What criteria is typically used when evaluating these types of requests?
The main criteria is how council feels.
Right.
Yeah, and we don't have any, I don't think, set criteria, and
There's some
it's definitely
examples.
not if it's licensed, we don't donate it. But if it's a community event, then it's basically up to council.
There are some exemptions, like we can't,
I think you're right there.
we wouldn't be donating for an individual, because sometimes individuals ask for a donation. So it's individuals, it has to, support community events and that type of thing.
Right.
Jen is gonna pull up the policy now, so we can look at the criteria. Down a little more, Jen. Here we are. So for those who can't read that, so be based within the town of Inuvik, be not for profit, fundraising effort, significance of the event, the total cost of the event, the benefit to the community, monies raised to event or activities associated must be used wholly within the town of Inuvik, with the exception of territorial or national championships, not be a recipient of any other financial or other type of assistance from council, not be a federal or territorial government funded initiative, and agree to acknowledge council's contribution in all publicly related events. So what the exemptions are the preferences given to not-for-profit, community support involvement, demonstrate how the funds are in kind donation is spent. And events, projects that support, sustain, promote, inform, educate, celebrate, preserve, and or provide access to the arts, culture, environment, heritage, youth, children, elders, recreation, and or healthy living activities. The following individuals are not eligible for support. Individuals, organizations, projects, or activities located outside of the town municipal boundaries, professional fundraisers working on behalf of the nation, generic requests that may have been sent to various organizations, requests for cash donations, to whom it may concern letters, and requests for donation of town facilities for licensed events. Other than the ones that are already identified in the policy, such as Muskrat Jamboree, Truth and Reconciliation, Firefighters Ball, and I think there's one other that I can't remember right now. Right.
Dr. McDonald.
Yeah, Trace, so as far as cleanup, is that responsibility of the mall staff or is that our staff?
That would be the responsibility of our staff at the end of the night. Anything outside of typically those events will take out their garbage and things like that, but you know, we're still responsible for the putting away of the tables and any of the infrastructure that they use.
Deputy Mayor Barrow.
Yeah, thanks. I'll speak in favor of the motion. This is an unlicensed event, community focused. I'm assuming it'll be free to attend for anyone who's interested. So I good criteria for support from town council and things like putting tables away that can be done the next day during the regular course of business. So they have staff at the facility. They don't have to do it in the evening. They don't want to, in my opinion.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions? Councilor Wayman.
In the past, like not this council, but in the past, we have supported the elders and their elders dances before. And it's for our elders, it's for our community. So it has been done before.
Yeah.
Just because they all, just like they did today, they all grew their equal halt, same thing happened 3 or 4 years ago. So we have past history.
Not just the elders, your age category's in there too. You too, Jake.
So you're attending, you're saying?
All right, I think we've got good questions on that. All those in favor? Motion carried.
Yes.
Item number 9, bylaws. 9.1, request for council decision on the 2025 annual tax bylaw. Moved by Councilor Parrott, second by Deputy Mayor Barlick. Any further discussion on 9.1? All those in favor? Motion carried.
Yes.
Sorry, do you need to read out the motion that they're? The third,
On the recommendation down here,
be it resolved.
yeah, I read out this, but
Yes.
okay, probably should read out the actual motion, not just the, it's almost the same, but be it resolved that in Inuvik Town Council hereby gives third reading to bylaw 2751/tax/25, the 2025 annual tax billing bylaw. All those in favor? Okay, motion
Yes.
passed. 9.2. Bylaw 2752/P+D/25, Town of Inuvik Community Plan. Let's get this on the table, then we're gonna have further discussion. Moved by Deputy Mayor Barlick, seconded by Councilor Parrott. Discussion. Just as way of update, Jen incorporated any of the comments that came in. And if there's any further questions, Peter's also online. So we've made the changes that came, well, we made mostly the changes that Stephen and other people had mentioned during the committee, the whole were incorporated. Councillor Parrott had some suggestions for changes, those were made. And I think, was it,
Councillor Gillis as well.
sorry?
Councillor.
Oh, Councillor Gillis also had some recommendations, and we were also able to make those changes. So those are all reflected in the community plan.
This map is still the same, it hasn't changed. It's like this.
No, the map that we gave you, I don't think Peter has updated it yet,
Oh, okay,
so this is still the original one.
okay.
The map was updated to change that R2 strip to R1.
I don't have that copy yet, sorry. So this is the old one.
Oh, okay.
So to clarify, Peter, the map in front of us, the R2 strip that you were talking about back to R1 is the one up on Bulbous
That is
Street?
correct. That is correct. If I may, for first reading, it's, in my opinion, standard practice for a council to pass a motion passing the bylaw with sort of recommended changes. In this case, passes, in this case, be the motion could be something like passes first reading with inclusion of the comments from council that have been received over the last 2 days. That would be a legitimate first reading motion. Second reading motions have to be very specific. They have to be, second reading passes and then specific, right in the motion, you list out any edits that you want. And they should be fairly minor in nature. And third reading, it has to be as the document is presented. So there's no editing required in the third reading motion.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, unless there is a major misdirection in the community planner zoning bylaw that you're very concerned about, I believe this document is ready for first reading. We have taken your comments. We've entered them. I want to have a final check to make certain that they're all consistent. It's cleaned up, but that would be a legitimate first reading.
Yeah, Mayor Barrett.
Sorry, just to follow up the discussion on Monday, did we get any clarification on the 3-story restriction on buildings?
So the ladder would fit that, but as it was explained to me, it's actually the building code to go higher, the expense, as well as the other requirements, because once you exceed the height of kind of our ladder, which we, is more than capable, then you need sprinklers, then you need other reinforcement, you need escape routes, shelter in place spots if you're looking at a high-rise building. So it doesn't, if you choose to have more than 6, the likelihood of somebody being able to afford to do more than 3, if you're looking at 6. But do you also want to put that limit on? Do you want to set the limit to 6 stories, or do you want to go higher than that?
If I may, another way approach is simply to set your maximum building height based on what is safe for your firefighting capacity, and let the builders figure that out, how many stories. Maybe they want to have 20-foot ceilings,
Right.
Mayor Barrett.
Yeah, thank you. No, that would tend to be my thing too. What you're describing is largely financial decisions of the people that would be developing the buildings. Do we want to set that limitation in our community plan based on, something that we could actually cover higher if we wanted? I don't imagine many people would be interested in building 5 or 6-story buildings, but do we want to actually implement that limit in our plan? Or can we just, as Peter said, to kind of put it to the upper limit of what the capabilities are from our fire department, and then it's really a financial and developer plan after that, as far as what they want to limit themselves to.
The other thing to add is I have not been in an Inuvik, in a blizzard in Inuvik. And there's many communities in Nunavut, for example, where I would be very comfortable setting building height based on the size of the snow drifts that occur on the lee side of buildings during the major blizzards. So we wouldn't want to go higher than 3 stories because you get up with a 40, 50, 50, 60-foot snowdrift, which can be very, very hazardous. So I don't know if any of it gets those kinds of blizzards.
So Peter, in your experience, say somebody wanted to come in and build a 6-story building. And our zoning bylaw is, has set it at maximum 3 stories, although the multiplex, I think, is 4 stories. So whatever the maximum height would be, if somebody wanted to come in and build higher, what would be the process to make that exemption? Would we have to rewrite the zoning bylaw? Would it be a discretionary, at the decision of council to allow it to happen?
It would be a variance at the discretion of council. The DO is usually allowed a 10% ability to flex the variance without going to council. I'm not so concerned about 3 stories. I think if you don't have the major snow drifting issue, I think 4 would probably be fine. What I find is in the wintertime in Arctic communities, you start dealing with shading effects and various snow blowing patterns and side wind effects that can be quite significant. But what I noted with the apartment building and the office building is that the height restriction was like 13 or 14 meters or something, and that seemed very, very assuming of 8-foot floors. And modern buildings nowadays try to go for 9 or 10-foot floors, and it wouldn't hurt to add a few meters on in the zoning bylaw. So that's why I was thinking, instead of saying number of stories in the community plan, you can even leave that section vacant, and in the zoning bylaw I'd set a little bit higher so that I'm not coming for variance on height because they want to go with 9-foot ceilings instead of 8-foot ceilings, and they still want 3 stories.
So we have a couple of options. One, if we go by height, I think that's realistic. So that way we're actually using meters in terms of height rather than the stories. What would your recommendation be if we did 3 to 4 stories, given the heights that you were talking about? And do we set a limit for that? And again, this is council's discretion. We can either leave it with the limit that somebody has to ask first, which is what they would be doing to change it, the variance, or do we leave it open so they don't have to ask? Because it's not just the height, I mean, it's also whereabouts, I know you have a lot of questions. This council has a lot of questions about where something's gonna go, what about the parking, all of that. By making it 6, 10, not having a limit, then you don't have a limit and you don't have a say. So that's entirely up to you. We can increase it, absolutely, but it's up to this council to decide whether or not they want to set a limit and make an exception if somebody asks, or raise it.
Questions, comments from council? Or did everyone, Councillor Lemieux?
I'm in favor of picking a height and just go with a height instead of number of floors.
Mhm.
Pick an actual maximum height that you can muck around with, and then you can leave design, can go to whoever's building it to just meet that. If they need to exceed it, then that's something that can come back to council and we can revisit it as on an individual basis. Is that not true?
Yes, that's what I was clarifying with
And that,
Peter,
I
so
think,
that would be the
I'm
case.
in favor of that, for sure.
So the question now is, what would that height be? Peter, what would that height be?
The apartment building or the office building, I believe, came in at 15.5 or 16 meters. My knee-jerk reaction to your question is to say 19 or 20 meters. I lived in a Iqaluit where there is an 8-story building. There's a rock formation in a Iqaluit which allowed for that you know, a very high quality foundation, which allowed them to build this quite a large building. You get the impression that people that live in the top, that it's high enough that they're kind of separated from community life, and the wind effects, like the wind hitting the building and then coming off it, can create some significant snow drifting patterns. That's my knee-jerk reaction.
I think our wind patterns are way different than a Calvin, given that we're below the tree line. I mean, it can get windy here, but rarely do we see like 80, 90, 100 kilometers.
Okay.
We've seen it, but not that often, so. I think it's more, you know, what would be functional, so maybe 20 meters, nice round number, easy to remember. Okay, can we,
Our
Is that
our
in?
ladder's like 105 feet, so it'll
What's that?
reach, plus,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
It'll reach, just don't expect us to pull you off the, that tall of the roof. But, there are also building codes in terms of fire suppression and fire detection. Building codes, higher buildings have a higher standard for it as well, so.
but that's not, most units over, I think. You need a sprinkler system, you need the alarm system, like, and units, like over 8 or 10 units, it's, even if you're one story, you still need those things, so it's, yeah, it's a big jump. And certainly a 3-story building would need pretty much all of those also, yeah. Deputy Mayor Barrett.
Yeah, no, appreciate the discussion. I'm definitely fine with going with the height restriction rather than a number of floors restriction too. A lot of the other stuff is engineering and financial considerations, which really are, but it could allow some flexibility for people in their engineering and design plans. So I think going to a height requirement probably gives a bit more flexibility to people.
Yep.
So I'd be in favor of that as well.
Okay, so can we, because you're gonna pass this, can we agree that we will, in this version here, for first reading, we will include a height limit of 20 meters. There's still the ability to come and get a variance for that, but as far as what's going to be in the actual community plan, it will be 20 meters. Sorry, Peter, I'm not sure, was that in the community plan or the zoning bylaw?
The zoning bylaw said 20 meters and the community plan said 3 stories. So I could just reword the community plan to say something more generic or to say specifically 20 meters. I probably in the community plan put something fairly generic statement, then just leave the wording as it is, but take out 3 stories or something like that.
Yeah, we'll make it consistent so that it's consistent in both community plan and the zoning bylaw.
Meet the height requirement per the zoning bylaw,
Yeah.
something generic like that.
Okay, any further questions on the community plan? So just to remind everyone what will happen now. We pass it first reading, it goes out for community consultation. We will be consulting with all of the indigenous groups in the community, which in the Inuvik Native Band, Métis, and as well as all of the other stakeholders in the community that including the public. We will likely have one evening of public consultation where people can come and we can look at the maps and highlight the plan. And then it comes back to us in the meeting that we have in August and for second reading. But after the community consultation, any input we get that we need to incorporate into the plan will come into the plan. Council will be informed of that input and then it will come for second reading. If passed second reading, then it goes to the minister's office, comes back, and as Peter said, no changes then. That's basically got the approval of the minister, and then we give it third reading. And that'll be in the September meeting. So that'll be the process that we'll follow. Okay, any further discussion, comments, questions? All those in favor?
Yes.
Motion carried.
So do you have to read that for
Well,
a reason.
It's not, there's nothing here.
On the back of the.
I read out that top part. Oh, sorry, on this back page.
Yeah.
Be it resolved that the Inuvik Town Council hereby gives first reading to the bylaw 2552/P+P/25, the community plan bylaw. All those in favor?
Or just 27.
Yes.
27. Yes. All those in favor? Motion
Yes.
carried. Don't want to get caught in a technicality here. Okay. Item 9.3, bylaw 2753/P+P25, Town of Inuvik zoning bylaw. Get this on the table for discussion. Moved by Deputy Mayor Barelick, seconded by Councillor Gillis. Any further discussion on the zoning bylaw?
Sure.
Councillor McDonald.
Yeah, the permitted uses or discretionary uses that include public utility, and under that public utility, I didn't look at the definition, but if we're gonna use the can we differentiate like a solar array from a public utility? Because if we put a solar array in a green space, it's like putting a refinery in a green space, like visually, it's not very appealing. So I don't know what they mean by utility, particularly in this document. I don't think it was meant for solar arrays, but is there something that we can differentiate that so that we don't end up putting huge solar arrays, eyesores, in my opinion, in green spaces?
Okay. Peter, any comment on that?
The definition in public utility at the present time in the zoning bylaw means any one or more of the following. Point E would be systems for electrical energy generation, transmission, and distribution, which would include solar panels. I guess we need to clarify here what green space means. Do we mean green space as in an actual park, or do we mean green space as in undeveloped land near Inuvik?
We have the definition.
That's a question.
Yeah, no, we're just, Jen is just pulling up, some of that stuff once she finds it.
I think it's in the other document.
This is the zoning already. Sorry about that.
Well,
You didn't find it?
let me rephrase.
Section
Let
7.
me rephrase the question. If it's green on the map, it's under a zone called parks and open space. I'm gonna retract my previous question. I'm gonna rephrase it. If it's green on the map, it's a PO zone, which is parks and open space. Currently, public utility is listed under permitted uses, and that includes any public utility. And public utility includes a solar array. Now, there's two approaches here. We can create a policy in the zoning bylaw around solar panels that they shall not be within a certain distance of a residential zone, for example. Which could be a general regulation in section 5 or 4 or 5. Or we can take public utility and move it from permitted uses over discretionary uses. And then all possible public utilities in the green zone will come to council. I'm a little bit more inclined to go with the latter option because every public utility is different. And if you're writing regulations for solar panels, then you're getting into how big is a solar panel, how high is a solar panel, what color is the solar panel, where is it pointing, etc. You can end up using pages of documents. Or if you just move it over to discretionary, it's a little bit more work for council. But we don't. In the 2 years I've been with Inuvik, I've only seen one public utility come through the the permitting process. So it wouldn't be a whole lot more work, just put it over to discretionary.
Questions, comments from council, that makes sense, just moving basically. Get from here over to here.
Yeah, I'd support that. I think a discussion, at least in these instances, would be good.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good, Peter, so we'll just do that in this final version. And then that, well, that will be the version we'll send out for consultation. Any further questions, comments on the zoning bylaw? Alderman McDonald.
Just one more question. Did we move, I know we talked about it, after the session yesterday, but, Councilor Balick had mentioned, moving the, oh, what was it? The trailer talk into, permanent use and not discretionary. Did that get moved over in the R1 in country residential?
Peter, are you able to answer that question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So what I ended up doing is I went into the definitions under different forms of dwelling. And I created two new definitions, one for modular, one for manufactured. And then I put those two M's side by side in the definitions, and then the actual definitions for the different types of dwellings. I explicitly stated that for like single family can include modular, duplex can include modular, manufactured home does not include modular, it is a trailer. Or looks like a trailer, it is a manufactured home. You know, multi-unit can be modular, etc. So the definition under modular says if it looks like it's stick-built when it's done, the zoning bylaw does not differentiate between modular and stick-built. And then I moved dwelling manufactured. I'm going to read it. I moved them in all three zones, all three types of residential zones, R1, R2, and CR. I moved manufactured homes or trailers to discretionary for all three zones.
Peter, what page of the definitions are you looking at?
One moment. It's under, I added some M's. So on the draft I'm looking at, it's on page 75, modular and manufacturer defined. I have them highlighted on the version I have here. But Jen and I didn't have time to double check that we had everything synced, so I'm hoping you're reading the same.
No,
We don't have it.
Okay.
Okay, let's just go down. Oh,
Go.
If I can screen share, I can show it.
Yeah,
actually go up to page 75.
I'm trying to make it be able to screen share. You should be able to screen share, Peter.
Okay. Okay. So under the M's, under these two, here, I'll zoom it up a bit. Is that big enough, or can I make it bigger on your screen?
It's not on the screen yet.
Modular means a building on a permanent foundation constructed in whole or in part in a factory and then transported to site. Upon completion, visually indistinguishable from a stick-built or building constructed on site. Manufactured means a building constructed in whole or in part in a factory and then transported to site. Upon completion, visually presents as a trailer.
Yeah, we're not seeing our screen yet, we're just seeing you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to push a blue button.
There we go, now we're seeing your screen.
The definition at the start is out. Okay.
Okay. So can everyone see or understand the definition difference now between modular and manufactured? And that manufactured, would commonly be known as a trailer, where the modular would look similar to a stick built. Okay,
All to your discretion.
You know, what we're saying is right, what we're saying that modular for country residential would be permitted use.
For all residential.
For country residential, wasn't it specifically?
Peter, modular was permitted in all 3 residential zones is what you said, right?
Yes, with limitations on sizing.
okay,
I'll zoom up to dwellings here and you'll see how I changed the wording. So dwelling cottage may be built on site or be modular. Duplex may be built on site or be modular. Dwelling manufactured. It's specifically, so it's manufactured. Mixed use building may be on site or modular. So all types of dwellings except manufactured dwellings can be stick built or modular. And then you have your standalone, your manufactured dwelling, which is effectively a trailer. And then I'll just zoom up to the zone regs. So so here you'll see on permitted, I've got in R2, I have duplexes, multi-unit secondary suites, all module, all under permitted. They may be modular. And then dwelling manufactured, which is a trailer, can be allowed in R2, but it requires discretion of council. And same for single detached and mixed use buildings in R2 zones, which these 2 could be modular. But because they're too small or too big for R2, they're under discretionary.
and then in our one,
I moved manufactured dwelling from permanent over to discretionary. The rule of thumb that what I would recommend, the rule of thumb on my RFDs, if I receive a manufactured dwelling permit request, whether I recommend it to council or, I mean, it's going to go to council, but whether I recommend that it's be accepted or not, is that there's a bunch of lots that were designed specifically for trailers. They're long, thin lots, and they're about half the width of your standard R1 lot, and they're designed for trailers, and they tend to be clustered. And sometimes they were zoned R2 by Dylan, I guess for a double wide or for like a duplex trailer or something. But where you see those long thin lots, I think that's where trailers belong. And a full size lot probably most of the time not, but there could be exceptions. So under R1 we have duplexes and single detached are permitted, and then trailers and multi-unit buildings and mixed-use buildings are under discretionary, either because they're trailers or because they're too big. In the previous zoning bylaw, there's a special residential zone for trailer parks, and Dylan removed that zone. So that's why we're playing with these definitions the way we are.
thanks, Peter. That answer everyone's question on the manufactured trailers?
Yeah.
Okay. Councilman Lemieux.
What have we got in play for relocating like older homes from different areas in town into neighborhoods? Like something similar to what we ran into on Carmichael, where we've got a decrepit old building that was moved in and it met all the criteria, but it certainly doesn't fit the requirements or aesthetically to the neighborhood. And there was we got a lot of flack about that, but it met the requirements for some silly reason. And, it's probably the biggest eyesore and misplaced building in town.
Yeah.
Is there anything we can do about that situation happening again?
Is there any comment on moving that?
I'm gonna find the section on relocation. Are you kidding me?
Hmm.
Dylan removed the section on the policies for relocation. Good question. Well, I probably gonna say we should probably look at the relocation policies from the previous zoning bylaw, which with a slightly reddish face, I will look up right now. And where did I put it? As you're seeing my files. Okay, this is
I do know when we were discussing the zoning bylaw and the community plan, even back when Dylan was here, we had discussed how to prevent something like that from happening again. And part of that was setting insulation standards. Was one of the idea, was so things that they would have to do to make the building fit. You know, within certain criteria in order to be able to move into one of those zones. Is kind of the way that we had left it, but
under the, let's see if they have a section called moving. Moving buildings. Okay, sorry, it is. It wasn't called relocation, it's called moving buildings, which I am now going to put in bracket relocation. Okay.
Okay.
Development permit shall be required for moving buildings. No person shall move a building or structure, including manufactured dwellings larger than 150 square feet within, into, or out of the municipality without an approved development permit. The DA may refuse to issue a permit for the moving of a building or structure if the building or structure would fail to conform to the requirements of the zone in which it is proposed the building or structure is to be moved. The development authority may, as a condition of development permit, require certain renovations or alterations so that the building will conform with the requirements of the zoning bylaw, the National Building Code, or other territorial or federal legislation. The development authority may require the applicant or owner to provide a security to ensure that the move to be completed within a time period specified as a condition of approval. There you go. Actually, that's not too bad. Sorry, I had a brain freeze. I was
That's
looking for
actually
relocation. I was
in
looking for the wrong word.
it's in the zoning bylaw.
In
Yes.
the zoning, I mean zoning bylaw. But is there anything in there which addresses Councilor Lemieux's concern that somebody would move something in that wasn't appropriate?
Well, it says here the development authority may, as a condition of development permit, require certain renovations or alterations so that the building will conform with the requirements of the zoning bylaw. What we could add of the zoning bylaw or other bylaws, the National Building Code of Canada and other territorial federal legislation. Does Inuvik have an unsightliness bylaw or equivalent?
Yes, it does. We would have to take a look at the actual building, what the building would look like. So when you're looking at unsightly, it would be, you know, the condition of the building itself. That's probably about the only thing that we could do. However, when that was brought up, when we were dealing with this issue in the past, that along with probably 24 other buildings in the town would have been pulled out as well. So I think what council is asking for is what can we do to prevent a situation where somebody brings in, and I'm gonna put quotes here, an inappropriate building into a neighborhood. Which is kind of what happened in this case.
Let me try this
So
wording.
it didn't fit with the flavor or the aesthetics of the neighborhood either. I mean, we don't want to be a housing authority, you know, an HOA, but you know, what they're looking for is what we can do within our zoning bylaw to see how those buildings fit into the current zone, because right now, when you look at the definition within each zone, like in R1, it doesn't have anything specific other than there's a certain size of the building, which in this case, it actually fit the size limitations, so we couldn't have denied the development permit for that.
So Peter,
And where it was on the lot, so that's what they're looking for, Peter.
yeah, so just added it there. So Peter, that 634, you've added that would address that concern. So can everyone read that? Or do you want me to read it again? You read it? No? Yes? So 6.3.4, the development authority may refuse to issue a permit for the moving of a building or structure, if the building or structure, if the building or structure's choice is in a decrepit or significantly unsightly condition.
That could work. The only thing it might not work is if the person moving the building saying, yes, I know it's decrepit, but once I moved it, I'm going to renovate it.
Yeah.
Was the case.
I mean, but
They might not think it's decrepit and ugly.
Well. Councilor McDonald?
Yeah, I mean, couldn't we put this under one of the discretionary, or all of the residential in the discretionary zones that if you're moving a building, which this could almost be considered modular, but if it isn't new, it's discretionary.
You mean putting an age limit on the building?
Not age, so yeah, if
So
so
any building over 20 years.
Well,
Any building would be discretionary?
I was more saying that if it, like a modular home is a newly factory built home that's moved onto the thing, so if you're moving an existing house, it's basically moving, it falls into that definition of almost a modular, and you're moving it to the new lot. But if we can add that it's a new modular build, then it's not discretionary, but if it's an existing modular build, it is discretionary, like it just, basically if it's an older, we don't have to put a time frame on it, but then it can be discretionary, and then anybody who's doing this, it can come to council.
That
Peter, does that make sense?
it gets complicated because as a rule of thumb, every land use under a particular zone has to have something in the definition. And you can't have overlap definitions. That's how you ensure it's a yes or a no. So if you say a building is over a certain age, then you're creating a new category of dwellings. And so then you need dwelling, single family, less than 20 years old, dwelling, single family, more than 20 years old. And then one goes in one category, one goes in the other. That can get complicated. I think what I just added would address that probably, is I added to what I'd already written, or issue condition that the building must be renovated to a certain standard by a certain date. And another one of these things says there's a right to require security. So if, for example, so I think the way this is written, let's say somebody comes and says, I want to move a really old house from point X onto Carmichael, and the building is in a horrific state. I could set a condition. I want to have the plans for how are you going to renovate this building. I would like to know what is your exterior skin going to be, when you're going to place it by, and I could even ask for security for the town, which could be set at could be set at $5,000 or $10,000 or something, saying we want the security that you will upgrade the condition of the exterior status of your house by a certain date after you move it, or your security will be forfeit.
Also, that address that concern?
A little bit better.
Yes, better. So Peter, that'll be added then onto moving or relocating buildings. 6.3 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so that'll be in the zoning bylaw then, that will specifically set that. Okay, Counselor Gillis?
Peter, who decides what's decrepit or unsightly? Because, I mean,
people are buying their lot and they're putting their house on there, and whatever they decide to do with their house is like their house. And if they can live in it, I mean, who decides that? Like, we just say, oh, you have an ugly house, so we want you to come to council and we can decide whether you get to put it on there. And then you're gonna give us $10,000 because you have to fix it up before this time. I don't understand how we could make that definition fly.
The legal term reasonable and unsightly are subjective, yes. The way this would be handled on the ground is if the building is a decrepit state, we'd negotiate before he put in the development application. I'd say, okay, send me some pictures. He sends me some pictures. I say, okay, I'm pretty sure this is going to have unsightliness issues. What are you planning to do? And he says, well, I'm going to repaint it, or I'm going to replace the siding. And I might ask for details. And I might say, okay, are you gonna do a proper repainting, or are you just gonna do like a slip shod? And, I may even get to that level of detail, and then we'll negotiate a bit, come to an agreement on what I, as the DO, think is reasonable for sightliness for the neighborhood that it's going to. I'm going to be talking to the other team members. If there's something feels off, we might go to council, but we're going to come to an agreement beforehand on what are you going to do after the building's moved. And so then it's kind of clear for everybody what the expectations are. So yeah, beauty is the sight of the beholder, but folks that have just put in, $400,000 for a fairly new house on one of the newer neighborhoods and don't want, a shack next to them. We'll come up with something that's mutually agreeable. And usually the security thing, I like to avoid doing security, but if we, in consultation with the CAO and other members of the town, we come up with something that we think will work based on the history of the resident, and then just stay on it. So it says, well, okay, I'm going to move it, I'm going to paint it this summer, and then you try to be reasonable and say, okay, well, instead of saying complete the painting by the summer, you have to complete the repainting, say, by the end of next summer, so you have an extra year to do it. You try to be reasonable and flexible.
So Peter,
And
I
then
think what might help, as you were speaking, I was looking up definitions of what is a decrepit building. So if we are going to put something like that in, we might have to have some other examples of what decrepit means. Peeling paint, broken windows, missing door frames, slumped deck, that type of thing. So we might want to just embellish the definition of decrepit or unsightly a little bit more. So is a little more clear for people.
I don't see any definition for decrepit in here.
Oh, I'm looking it up as you're speaking, I'm looking it up online. What is the definition of a decrepit house?
Okay.
Probably if we add it to our definition.
So I think if we added that to our definitions and embellished them a little bit more, it would probably answer your question as well. Be a guideline. Yeah, it would be at least a good guideline for you and for other people who are hoping to move a house.
Yeah.
Councilor Barrow, or Deputy Mayor Barrow.
Yeah, no, sorry, yeah, I think this is good for guide and, could be including but not limited to blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think I have some level of comfort of adding a clause like that in there. Even if it's not quite sure how it might be executed, because I think the situation that came up is still gonna be fairly uncommon, if not rare. But at least in this case, we give council a little bit of room to have some influence, but it also is written in a way that encourages anyone that's moving a building to deal with the issues. Or else they might not get a permit.
Yeah.
So I think I'm comfortable with that addition as 634, I think it was. And obviously adding in a definition of what decrepit and or unsightly is.
Okay, Peter, sounds good. You can add the definition and the 634 that you implemented in there, or inserted in there also sounds good. Exactly, that was just
Yeah, okay, I'll work on this definition, but you see where it's going.
Yeah, okay. Any further comments, questions, clarifications on the zoning bylaw?
I do want to clarify that one of the honorable councilors made a suggestion that libraries and youth centers be included as permitted land uses in certain types of zones. There is a word, believe it's called a public assembly or assembly, place of assembly, to look it up, but so that already had library listed under it, and what I did is I added youth public assembly. Yeah, so it already had public assembly means of use for public and assemble for education, instruction, culture, or communal activity may include, it's not limited to municipal government services, libraries, museums. I added youth center, art galleries. It just makes it easier than having all these things separate.
Okay. Any further questions, comments, clarifications on the zoning bylaw? All those in favor? Oh, I gotta read it, sorry. Be it resolved that Inuvik Town Council hereby gives first reading to bylaw 2753/P+D/25, the zoning bylaw. All those in favor?
With suggested amendments.
What's it, with all the suggested amendments, but that won't be in the.
Yeah, it can be in there, it should be in the
Okay,
motion. We made changes in this meeting.
yeah, with the suggested amendments. All those in favor? Motion carried.
Yes.
Thank
All
you.
right. We don't have departmental updates at this meeting, information items. We had the RCMP report that was attached with it Monday. We do have a letter from the Children's First Center requesting a board representative. I guess they had one in the past. Somebody from town council also sat on the board for the Children's First Center. Remember that, Stephen? Or
You staff person,
was it a staff
there's a
person?
finance.
So originally it was Eric Whitworth, who was the director of finance at the time. That was
Okay.
back in 2000s. They had requested some assistance with their financial management,
Right.
and that was provided. And then when Eric left, it was kind of a lull. And then they had asked back to have somebody come back again, and it was actually Councillor Alexis who came to
Okay.
represent the town that way.
Okay, so was staff, and then went to a counselor. What's the wishes of this council is the wishes to, I mean, mostly it's to have that bridge of communications, because I guess we own the building, and just to be able to have that level of input or information exchanged at their board level. Do we wish to have someone from our staff? Do we wish to have a counselor? Do we wish to just keep informed if there's items that are of council concern and to be invited, or what are the wishes? Counselor Gillis,
Do we know how they meet?
pardon me,
Do we know how often they meet?
I think it's once a month except for the summer.
They don't meet in the summer.
That's what I mean, except the summer. I think it's once a month except the summer.
Peter, we still own the building, right?
We still own the building, yes.
I would like to see us still involved since we still own the building.
Okay. So should we be involved with a staff member, or should we be involved with a counselor?
I think a staff
Councilor
member is
Murphy.
more consistent.
I was gonna say, do we have staff members that are capable of doing it with their timeline, their duties
Well,
already?
The obvious department, because it's a building, would be infrastructure, and then Daniel would have to decide which staff that, we would have participate, cause you know, that's the area the umbrella would fit under, and whether it would be Daniel or one of his other staff, if we wanted it to be a staff member.
Yeah, I was
Councilor
just gonna
McDonald.
say, I think Daniel's busy enough already.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
So you're gonna do it?
No, I think you're fine the way we're going along right now. I don't know, think, it's my opinion, I don't think we need a staff member or a counselor there. If a counselor wants to be on the board, maybe they can be welcome, but if not, I don't think it should be mandated that we have a staff member or a counselor on there.
Okay. Maybe we can just clarify this right away. Are there any counselors that are interested on being on that board? Counselor Gillis.
Okay.
You're interested?
Yeah.
Okay. The Counselor Gillis will be our counselor on the Children's First Board, and it's interesting, it's kind of a big circle because Counselor Gillis was the chair when it was built, so it's familiar with the building.
Grandchildren and.
And I've got grandchildren in there where that's where Hudson was when we were actually building that building, so, yeah. The most familiar with the building counselor will be on that council, so we will report back. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Second information item, which this wasn't, didn't make it in time for a council decision, but I've been approached to write a letter to the Honorable Lena Meleg Diab. She's the Minister for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, but requesting dedication for permanent resident pathway for Inuvik under the Rural Immigration Program. So what that means is communities in rural and remote areas can apply to get on that pathway, and then that allows for a higher number of temporary foreign workers or people immigrating, as you see in Little Ava's, as you see in Home Hardware, as you see in the hospital, as you see in other places that are having challenges finding enough workers to keep the doors open. So, but I didn't want to just write the letter without coming to council and asking for approval, that council felt that was a good support letter to write. We're not deciding anything. All we're doing is writing to the federal minister that Inuvik as a northern and remote location would be included in that. Any questions, comments, concerns with such a letter? Okay,
Sorry, Peter, do you have a little more, can you explain a little bit more what that program does or what it is? Sorry,
yeah, so what the program does is, I think it's called a dedicated permanent residency pathway under the Rural Immigration Program. So what they have for people who have applied for their permanent residency, so that they're already in Canada, they've applied for their permanent residency, but the process is like 2 years long. So then they typically are able to get work, and what they've done is kind of a per capita basis, because that's where people, the rural and remote areas where it was the hardest to find workers, because people gravitate to the, Vancouver, Toronto, those places. So they made special provisions. If people want to go and work in the rural areas, then per capita wise, like Yellowknife, Whitehorse, Iqaluit, get a higher percentage of people applying to be permanent residents than, for example, Toronto, Vancouver, Edmonton would get. So we would also be included in that Northern Rural Residency Program. I guess we're not now. I had no idea we weren't included. You would think it would be, all three territories because we're all, but I guess we're not included.
And so I'm guessing that it would be easier, so people who apply with this program or with, and then come to Inuvik, it helps them get their permanent residency easy, like and quicker and easily.
Well, it gives them more options for employment, while they're waiting that 2-year period or whatever it is, from the time they apply till the time they actually get permanent residency. Counselor Barrett, you had a question?
I was just indicating that I think this is a great idea and I'm in support of you writing the letter.
Good.
Thank-
Deputy Mayor Barrett,
Guess I'll just echo that support as well.
okay. Any further questions, comments? All those in favor of me writing a score letter?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. Have to make sure. Any further information items?
Nothing has popped. Oh, so I just got a request from Dr. Urquhart. It just came in just before this meeting. But they are looking at physician recruitment and incentives. And they like to have a conversation with the town about what we can do, Chamber of Commerce, that type of thing. So I'm bringing it to your attention now, to give you an update later. This might be a good one to talk with the leadership council with as well, in terms of how we can support any support physicians to stay here. So I think it's a great idea. So I'm going to follow up, but you'll be hearing a little bit more about that on how we can actually recruit and retain physicians here.
One further information, I'm sorry, had it on the other paper, but not on this one. The potential dentist is coming up next week to look at another property that he's hoping to rent, and he's still moving forward, and so we'll hopefully have a resident dentist here sometime late fall. And all those of you who have gone out yourself on your own dime or accompanying kids, I mean, that'll be a relief to everyone, plus it'll be a relief on trying to fly out of here, in that the number of medical and dental people going out from the Beaufort Delta and then other areas outside of Yellowknife is beyond. It's keeping all the hotels in Yellowknife filled, but the inconvenience for everybody else in the territories is huge. So hopefully we will have that taken care of late fall. Any other information items from any of the councilors? Okay, we don't have anything to go in camera about, so just need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councilor Lemieux. Thanks, everyone.